It looks like fans of giant robots and monster battles finally have something exciting to talk about again, because some new updates about the Pacific Rim franchise are making waves. And honestly, it's kind of refreshing to see the series back in the spotlight, since the future of Pacific Rim has always been a little uncertain after the mixed reaction to the second film. What's really interesting this time is that not only is there talk about Charlie Hunnam's one condition for returning in a possible Pacific Rim 3, but there's also official news about a brand new live-action series in development at Amazon. Add in the fact that there are new comic projects and some lingering fan theories about how Pacific Rim could have crossed over with Godzilla, and suddenly, this franchise feels alive again. So, let's take a closer look at everything happening with Pacific Rim right now and why Charlie Hunnam's condition might actually solve one of the franchise's biggest problems. The biggest headline to kick things off is definitely the live-action Pacific Rim series. According to Deadline, Amazon and Legendary are teaming up with Eric Heiserer, who you might know as the writer behind Arrival, Bird Box, and Netflix's Shadow and Bone. He's going to be the writer and executive producer of the new show, which is a pretty big deal because Heiserer already has a reputation for balancing emotional storytelling with high-concept sci-fi. Since the Pacific Rim franchise has always walked that line between being about massive spectacle and human connection, having him in charge actually makes a lot of sense. The series will be part of his first-look deal with Legendary, which suggests they're taking it very seriously and not just tossing it out as a side project. Now, if you think about the Pacific Rim universe itself, it's actually a great fit for television. The movies have already established this whole mythology about humanity building Jaegers, giant piloted robots, to protect the world from interdimensional monsters called Kaiju. That premise is big enough to support multiple stories, and even though we've had 2 feature films and an animated series, it still feels like there's room to dive deeper into the world. A TV series gives them the chance to slow down and build up new pilots, new Jaegers, and even different regions' approaches to the war against Kaiju. Because it's a global conflict, the possibilities are basically endless. This isn't the first time Pacific Rim has ventured into television, of course. Netflix already had the animated show Pacific Rim: The Black, which did a solid job of expanding the lore and exploring what survival looks like in a post-Jaeger era. But a live-action series will naturally feel more like the movies and give fans that epic, larger-than-life feeling again. Considering how many people still talk about the visuals and designs from Guillermo del Toro's original 2013 film, that could be exactly what the franchise needs to win back old fans while pulling in new ones. Speaking of the original film, let's talk about where all this leaves the idea of a Pacific Rim 3. Now, fans had been hoping for a third installment ever since the credits rolled on Pacific Rim Uprising. Now, that sequel didn't land quite the way Legendary was probably hoping. It did okay financially, but it lacked the emotional weight and style that Del Toro brought to the first one. Because of that, plans for a third movie got shelved. But interestingly, director Stephen S. DeKnight once revealed that his idea for Pacific Rim 3 would have ended with a massive twist, a direct connection to the Godzilla vs. Kong monsterverse. That idea alone has fueled years of speculation because fans can't stop wondering what it would look like if Godzilla actually crossed paths with a Jaeger. Theoretically, the timelines don't quite line up since Pacific Rim starts its kaiju history in 2013, while the monsterverse had its own established canon. But DeKnight suggested a possible way around that, like having Godzilla fall through a dimensional portal into the Pacific Rim Earth, or maybe sending a Jaeger into Godzilla's world. It's the kind of crossover idea that's fun to imagine, even if it never actually happens. Guillermo del Toro himself has even said he'd be open to the idea, and let's be real, who wouldn't want to see Godzilla brawling with a Jaeger in live action? It might never happen, but the thought of it alone shows how much untapped potential Pacific Rim still has. Of course, none of that matters unless the franchise has its main hero back. And that brings us to Charlie Hunnam, who played Raleigh Becket in the first film. Hunnam has finally addressed the possibility of returning for Pacific Rim 3, and his answer is both simple and kinda perfect. He said he would come back under one condition, if Guillermo del Toro himself invited him. In his own words, I would do anything that Guillermo was doing. If Guillermo invites me to do Pacific Rim 3, I'll be there, or anything else he wants me to do. That statement says a lot. It shows that Hunnam's loyalty lies more with Del Toro as a filmmaker than with the franchise itself, which honestly makes sense. Del Toro was the heart of the first film. His style, his love for monster movies, and his ability to make the Jaegers feel like real characters all came through in the original. Without him, the second film felt more like a generic blockbuster than a passionate tribute to kaiju and mecha traditions. So if Hunnam insists on Del Toro's involvement, that might actually be exactly what Pacific Rim 3 needs. It would ensure the heart of the story comes back along with the spectacle. Although Del Toro doesn't seem particularly interested in revisiting the franchise right now, the idea of him reuniting with Hunnam is pretty exciting. They've worked together not just on Pacific Rim, but also on Crimson Peak, and clearly, Hunnam values that creative partnership. If Legendary ever wanted to get serious about reviving Pacific Rim on the big screen, using that reunion as the hook could be the best move. Fans would see it as a return to the original vision rather than just another attempt to cash in on the name. But while we wait to see if that ever happens, the franchise is still alive in other forms. One of the coolest updates recently came from the world of comics. Legendary Comics announced Pacific Rim Final Breach, a 3-volume graphic novel series set after the events of the films. What's neat about this project is that it's being crowdfunded through Kickstarter, and fans responded in a big way. By the time the campaign ended, more than 1,500 backers had pledged over $200,000 to make it happen. That kind of support shows the franchise still has a passionate fan base ready to invest in new stories. The story of Final Breach is set to follow Jake Pentecost and Herman Gottlieb as they attempt one final mission to close the rift and end the kaiju threat once and for all. And here's where it gets even more exciting. They'll need help from none other than Raleigh Becket, who disappeared after the first film. So fans who always wondered what happened to him after piloting Gypsy Danger are finally getting some closure. The first volume is scheduled for release in October 2025, with 2 more coming in 2026 and 2027. It may not be a film trilogy closer, but it's still a satisfying continuation of the story. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.